Hello and welcome to C-Suite Secrets. I'm Heather Parsons, your host, a serial entrepreneur, fractional CFO, and a business strategist. I've spent years juggling business and family life while helping entrepreneurs scale, optimize cash flow, and build real financial success. On our show, we bring you real conversations with founders, executives, and operators about what actually moves the needle in their business. No fluff, no filler, just smart strategy, systems that work, and insights that you can put to use in your business right away. With that, let's dive right in. Today on C-Suite Secrets, I'm joined by Jay Daks. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. So for folks who may not be super familiar with you and Hexagon, I'd love it if you would give us a little bit of an intro about you and how you got here.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I own and operate a company called Hexagon IT Solutions. We have been in the industry for 16 plus years. We build SaaS products for us as well as for the customers who want to work with us. We do a lot of custom software development. In the course of it, we have branched out as so we not only do that, we also do digital marketing service that's run by our sister company, Fifth Floor Media, and then we also do HR services on the safety side of things. That's a sister company of ours that runs that. So we work in the industry. We have been working in the industry for 16 plus years, as I said before. And I came into the industry when I saw that there is a huge niche between people who are able to, means who have the idea to do something, but also affordable. So that's where our company came into play, where we can provide affordable service and also keep the budget at a affordable level.
I love that. As a fractional CFO and somebody who has spent the majority of their career in tech, that affordability piece is huge. So, one question, being in the business so long, what were some of the problems that you initially were trying to solve that have shifted over the years?
The one thing that I would say is previously, when you look at companies that used to build software solutions, they primarily concentrated on the features, what is best they think is that works, and then slowly it has pivoted towards outcome-based style applications. Like, if they build that, will that solve a problem? Previously, people used to have ideas and they just think that they can take the idea and run with it. They come up and ask us to build it. When you say like, hey, doesn't see like a practical solution, they still say like, hey, we have the money, if you want to build it, you can build it, or we go somewhere else. But now people are more like, no, I have this idea, can you do like a POC, we can test it out and see if this is even something. If it doesn't even have legs, then they don't want to move any forward. So that has a bigger shift right now.
I think that's a great shift, though, as I work with businesses, that being intentional, knowing the outcome they're really trying to get to, I think really moves the needle a lot for businesses, and it helps them to get to that return on their investment. So
That's true.
as you're working with companies and they're coming in for the first time, what are some of the things that they need to think about before they engage with a company like you, or what are the first steps at helping them get to the right solution?
For us, primarily, when we look at companies or organizations that want to build something out of the box, we our first question would be like, are you solving a problem, or is this a feature that you're trying to add into your system? And if you go with that, then they start thinking, if this is basically what we're asking is this really necessary, or you're just trying to do like a shiny bell to whatever you're using right now. So when you ask them that question, then they have to literally think about it at least for a few minutes, because a lot of the times people think building custom software is pretty easy because they've used apps on their phone and people have built so many apps. They think that you just come and create something. That's primarily doesn't work that way. With the software, you need to think about security. We need to think about what is the potential usage of this application. We also look at, hey, we can build things, but if you're not going to use it, if it just sits on shelf, it's just waste of our skill set. Like, yeah, we got paid, but there's nothing to show for saying, hey, this has been built. So that's one of the reasons we start with the question of like, hey, is this a feature or is this a necessity trying to resolve somebody's problem? Okay, if it is actually resolving a problem, are you solving a business problem or a functional problem? So when you look at that picture, then you can say, okay, if it is a functional issue or a feature issue, am I solving this for the business, or is it I'm just wanting to do something because I have a budget for it? So those are the questions that we would want anybody to think about if they're solving it, if they're a functional or a business, and if it is a business or functional. Based on that, how much do they want to spend it? Because if for instance, if you're the average time you take to do that task is going to be less than what you're going to spend on doing a development, then it doesn't make any sense. If the average amount you're going to spend about, like, it's like your software cost comes closer to less than what it is, then it is a good fit, because that the fit is very necessary, because you can spend a lot of money going down the rabbit hole of custom software solution and never even finish it after 10 years, and you still think that this is coming. And we have taken over projects from other companies where they've been with a custom development company, and they see that they were chasing a goose for a long time, and then they come back like, hey, we have spent so much money in the last 3 years, can you come and help us to do this? You're just looking at it, and then we ourselves get tangled in some projects where the stakeholders give you a scope, and then the scope creeps, and then you're in the process of building it. You want to achieve what they want, but once you finish it, they don't even know how to use it. At that point, you're like feeling like dumb, because you develop something based on what they're asking, and they don't know how to use it, and they want you to show them how to use it, and then they say, can you add all these things so we can basically use it in a different way, like an Excel sheet? And then you're sitting there and thinking, you could have just used your Excel sheet. Why did you even come to us? so
Right.
so yeah, so that's one of the thing I would say, like, be persistent in understanding due diligence of like, hey, is this really necessary? Should we go in this rabbit hole? Things like that.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's where companies that have somebody like me who is sitting there working with them and looking at the financials, if you don't have somebody on your leadership team in technology or working with your, founder or CEO, it's really difficult, because you
Mhm.
need that pushback to say, okay, what problem are we solving? How are we going to use this in the end? Because I think those of us who have been in large corporations, they can weather an IT project like you're talking about that drags on for 10 years and they spend all this money. But small businesses can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
They just don't have that bandwidth. They really need it to be something that comes in and solves a lot of their problems, rather than just be shiny new bells and whistles that sit on the shelf and nobody works with it.
Yeah.
You also mentioned talking about apps, and a lot of people believe that software development is like developing apps. So I would love to hear your thoughts and insights on what's the biggest mistakes that business owners have about how software actually gets built, or misunderstanding, I mean.
Misunderstood. So when you look at an app, the app solves one issue only. It doesn't solve a million things. You can build multifunctional app, but then you're still wasting a lot of time and money to build that, and then you build a desktop application that will interface with that app, and then you're building a native app, and there's so much you do. uh, on a software side, if you see, you start with the problem and then say, this is the problem and how to resolve it, and then you systematically create an application with security protocols. So It's not like a one-time use or 10-time use. It's going to be there forever. And then it adds value. It turns out to be an asset for a company where it actually adds more value to your company as a company because it can be considered as an asset into it. So that's one of the thing that somebody should understand when they look at software. It's like, hey, this is a process that we are building. The software does build a process for the company, and that process is what we want everybody to follow in our company. So that's primarily what we would say the difference between an app and a software development is. You can take a software and then convert it into an app, but it doesn't solve every single, because your app is usually more directed toward one solution.
I like that. I think that's a good representation and hopefully will help a lot of business owners understand the difference of what they're really looking for. With an app being a much more simple, maybe solves one problem, but a software being so much more robust and solving a lot of their problems along the way. You know, One thing I believe that adds a lot more complexity to this as we go along is the introduction of AI. So everybody's always asking, how can AI do this? So what do founders get wrong about AI implementation, and especially whenever they're trying to marry AI with their software or software development?
Uh, AI has come very long from where it is. It's a great tool. It can help a business to achieve some of the goals or a lot of the goals based on how it is being utilized. You can have Gemini, you can have ChatGPT, you can have Claude, like you can have different subscriptions that you're playing with, but it is just not something where it's not like an email tool. It's not like a tool to write your proposal or something. But you can utilize them for that. But AI could be a lot more than what it is. You can automate a lot of your applications. That's something that we continuously help. We've been helping a lot of companies to achieve that in the last 1.5 years or so. It's like you just don't have to have it to utilize just one piece or just write an email or write a proposal or even create images and videos. Yeah, those are all great things that it can do, but it can automate a lot of the work that somebody can do, but you need to know what to automate and what not to automate. It's not going to go create a 10-page proposal for you without you giving it actual prompts that it would create that. You need to say, these are all the things that I need. You have to purposefully spend time on an AI tool to tell it what to be done. I almost feel like it's like a child. You tell the child what to do and it actually does it. Usually children don't do that. That's a different story.
Right.
I wish my kids do that, but they don't. But AI can actually do what you're trying to make them do. Like you can tell them, these are all the outputs I need, these are all the inputs I can give you, and based on this, can you provide this information for me? It's super calculative. It can do mass amount of calculations for a company. Now you can use AI to start coding. Some of our guys who do day in and day out coding, they use tools like anti-gravity to help them in coding. And the 10 days worth of work, we can complete it in like 1 or 2 days now, just because of you can create libraries and keep it, and you can use libraries much easier. It's kind of like a tool that can be used to speed up what you're already doing. And also there's one thing that I like about it is like you can always double check your whatever output is, because sometimes as a developer you're developing and you're not checking the output. For you it might be like, this is super easy and intuitive, but that's not the case when actual users are using it. And that's something that AI can help you to mitigate, like how well people can take it.
That's some great information. And as they're going through this process, whether it's developer time or whether it's something that, you're helping clients to implement, what's your litmus test for whether AI is actually worth the investment or they should go another route?
It's primarily the development cost, right? If you can cut your work hours, your daily work hours, for instance, 1 to 2 hours a day, then you're significantly gaining about 10 hours a day. Okay. And as a founder, if you put that into cost, you're like, hey, I'm 200 to $250 an hour. So per day you're saving $500, and then per week you're like close to $5,000 saving. And there you don't have to read million texts that come through. You can make your AI to do it. And also, there are a lot of people who send emails, and you can have your AI to summarize and give it to you. So you kind of reduce the amount of time that you're spending on doing things that doesn't make you money, but you can spend more time in things that actually makes actual money.
That's great. And I think that ROI is a point that I always hit on whenever I'm working with founders. It should either save you money,
Mhm.
get the founder their time back, or really help them prepare for the future or improve their security, right? So if we're
Yeah.
not hitting on at least one of those four things, we got to be really careful about, are we just doing one of those shiny bells and whistles that you're talking about earlier?
Yeah.
So from a builder's perspective, anything else you would add to that about how founders should evaluate ROI when looking to invest in custom software?
One of the major ingredient or necessity when you are looking at custom solutions is that, is this the right fit for your company, the custom solution? Because custom solution comes with maintenance, because you would be maintaining it. Are you up for it? Are you okay using a tool that someone else has it as a SaaS platform, and if you want to use it? So that's the huge question of like, okay, we have the infrastructure to maintain it, we have people who can maintain it, or you have to have like an AMC contract, which is annual maintenance contract, with the person who's building it for you. So that way you're not stuck or in the middle of the road, but somebody is there to take care of it for you, and you can hold that person responsible for keeping track of it. That would be the first thing that need to think about when they're thinking, do I want to do a custom solution? The other thing is, there are industries, there are potential business processes that needs a custom solution, where store bought, which is like a shelf application, might not help. You may have to build something that can help you. So that evaluation has to be done. Whether this can be, like, that's like the due diligence, right? If the cost of developing something and the cost of buying something, and if they both are going to give you the same result, and yes, that's great, you can use a shelved product, because there is also cost of maintenance, and that's something that the SaaS companies take care of, it is the maintenance part.
That's a really good point. And talking about those businesses that really need more of a custom solution. I know you work deeply in fintech and healthcare and other highly regulated businesses.
Mhm.
How do businesses that are looking to build software in those industries, how does that change the way you design and deploy solutions whenever you're working with those folks?
So healthcare and financial industry pretty much are pretty equal in terms of security. You think first security, and then their application and the solution that you can provide for them. Um, that's a huge curve when you compare to the regular software development, because you think about the features and business processes first, and then you add the security on top of it as a layer. And but in a because of all the PHI information that's involved in both financial and healthcare, that's a huge thing about, is like, hey, how secure this can be. Anything you're building, you're thinking like, okay, is someone going to take over this area? Or that's something that you constantly think about when you're doing healthcare and financial services related applications.
Okay. So whenever you're working with these industries, I know a lot of them have been in the game for a little while. So what is the biggest compliance mistake that you see with early stage founders that you're starting to work with?
So early stage founders, that they are tight-roped for money, so they try to see how to cut corners and see how they can scale really fast. So one of the huge thing that we have seen in the industry right now is that they, even if you take hosting, they host their, like, they don't get actual backup. They try to go with whatever the hosting company will give them as default. There's no disaster recovery or anything, and they don't have enough security layers where they can protect themselves from any threats. If they're hit by anything, that's when they're thinking, oh, I should have spent this additional money to take care of it. So that's one thing that I would say, like, yeah, if you're like really stretching, those are some areas where you need to look at, like, where you want to spend money, where you want to control your budget, and how you want to control those would be the best thing. Because usually people say this one feature will make it great, but this is going to be like 300 or 400 or 500 hours for me to do it. I don't know if I can afford to do that. But then you also have to look at, like, hey, is this really necessary, or is this something that you think it is necessary? So those are the questions we usually ask.
Okay. No, I think that's great. And that's some good advice for founders out there who are trying to figure out where do they need to lean in with some of their dollars to get the biggest bang for their buck. We want to have all of these great features, but we also need to be secure and not have a breach with our data or client data. Because most of the time, especially in small business, if you do experience a security breach, most of those businesses are out of business within the next 12 months. So that's a statistic I would love to see go away as well. Not just cash flow issues, but this security thing is a real challenge.
That's true.
So whenever we're looking at all of this, do you have any metrics or dashboards that you want to use with your founders while you're going through this process? What should they be looking for?
Primarily, risk evaluation is a huge thing that we recommend. Every company we work with, we ask them to do a risk evaluation to see what is that involves, where they can take leniency and where they have to be strict with. And then also, when building a product, we ask them, what is your MVP? If we publish your MVP, what is your ROI on that MVP? And then what steps would follow once the MVP is released? So those go hand in hand with their budgets, and it's very essential.
That's great. And I'd love to dive a little bit more on the MVP and what their expected ROI is on these things. I know as I talk to tech founders, that's something they're super familiar with because that's how they wind up with funding, right? Once you have your MVP, that's usually whenever you start looking to get funding into your business and you have your business plan that you're going to run with from there. But I think that's equally as important for businesses who are just developing a software, even if they're not a tech company. I'd love your thoughts on that and some of the things that non-tech folks will also want to look for.
When developing the MVP, the first thing that we need to look at is, like, that we look at is, as a company, what are they trying to achieve, and what part of their development, if we make it as an MVP, will make more sense to the people to utilize it. That's where because we don't know every single business, right? We don't understand what every single business goals are. So that's where we spend a little bit of more time in the discovery, like, what is exactly you're trying to achieve, and where you want to stand, and what's your timeline. Because the timeline and the development of MVP is very important, because people have imaginary timelines in their head, and, like, there's only so much we can do, when it comes to software development. There are contingencies when they develop software development. We, the project managers, take enough time to segment the application development into so many layers, so different people can do the work together and bring it together. But most of the people think, like, custom software development is like a home building. One person can build one room, and the other person can build the other room, and they can all put it together. But that's not how this works. That's why we usually tell, like, when you're doing the MVP, like, what do you actually want. It's very easy when you're doing a home building. You can change the kitchen cabinet within, it's just a matter of money, right? Okay, I'm willing to spend $5,000 more. I can change it. But that's not how it works with the software. It's like you don't frame it out correctly in the beginning, and all of a sudden you're making a change. That change can escalate into a delay in delivery of the MVP. So though all those things needs to be considered by a founder before they go into making a statement of this will be my MVP. MVP can be in any sizes, right? It can be as simple as delivering a PDF out of a report, but they need to decide what that is, and if that would be the real, will that be enough for them to show to an investor and get money from them.
That's a really good point. And as you're talking about that, it also leads me to think about, technical debt. And as companies are going through this development process and they're developing these tools and trying to grow and scale their business, how do you see technical debt limiting founder decisions, especially as companies try to scale?
That's a that's like a $1 million question, right? It's like, as of right now, as a founder, you always think what you found is great, and you get 10 more customers inside your application, that debt is going to minimize. But that doesn't really happen, because there's also a timeline of onboarding someone, bringing them up to speed, and then agreeing to the fact that from which date they are going to make the payment. So there are a lot of things involved. So careful planning, and then looking at what you have, and then pricing your product correctly, and risk management of what if is most important, because a lot of founders don't think about the what if this doesn't happen. They always think like, this is going to happen, this is like, it's almost like milestone is what they think in their head, but they never think on the negative side. Okay, this doesn't happen, where do I fall? If this doesn't happen, where do I fall? That part needs to be considered in my mind.
That's very fair. I think in having that scoped out and really pricing it well, you know, eliminates a lot of the issues around that because you know
Mhm.
what you're already delivering and you don't have to worry about it as much. One of the things that I've seen working in tech myself is where we get into things like what are we going to have as a patch versus something that has to be completely rebuilt. And I'd
Mhm.
love your take on that and things that, founders need to think about as they're building these solutions because as you mentioned, it's not super easy to just bring in another contractor and switch out the cabinets. This is a big development piece, and all of these pieces parts have to come in together.
Sure. I can, don't have to give out the company name. We worked with a company that had built out an e-commerce platform. They built it out with a company from Philippines, but they couldn't finish the project. They asked us to take over the project. When we took over the project, we looked at the code standard, and then we also looked at a lot of the security protocols that we measure an application. We saw that we would be better off building brand new than taking what is there and patching it up. That assessment, the true assessment, is very necessary. A lot of times when we say things like that as a company, because we make money when we build stuff. So when we say, hey, this has to be rebuilt, in their mind, it's like, is this actually a rebuild, or you're trying to rip us off? And you're like you have to prove these are all the reasons why this has to be rebuilt. They can get one or two opinions, like they can go talk to different companies and see if that's actually true. And we usually recommend them to go and check it out, because later down the road they'll say like, hey, you told us to rebuild, so that's the route we are taking, and we want this to be done faster. Now, it is going to take the time it is going to take, and it would be better off for them to build it brand new if there are so many security threats. And then if the code is not up to standard, because you can build a patch, but then you'll be building patches after patches just to keep it running.
Right. Just putting a band-aid on a bigger problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of that and those decisions and discussions come down to leadership. So, as somebody who's been running a software company for going towards 2 decades now, I know that takes a lot of discipline. So, what leadership lessons have you learned going through all of this and what has mattered most as your business has matured?
For us, we've always taken one measure in our head, is like keeping the client happy, making sure that we meet their requirements, but also we take very calculated steps. We weigh out our risks, because we have fallen many times. We have taken a lot of wrong decisions. It's not like we came out of the box last of this is all known. We still make mistakes, but we are very careful whom we work with, in what we work with. Like, this is this something that's going to this something that is core part of our business, or is this something that is out of the whack and we are going to take this just because we wanted to prove something? So that's something that we have been very careful about. We are a custom software development company. We work in the CRM ERP space, and then we work with a lot of APIs and app development, but we continuously have decided, if it doesn't come closer to the core part of our business, not to get involved. Because you get involved, then there's a time suck that is there that nobody thinks about, and then you're also stuck with a client who is impatient while you're trying to figure things out. Even though you have said that, hey, this is something that we have not done before, we are going to do it, but we need you to understand that this is going to take time to get it done. They all agree at the beginning. But the one thing that I would recommend any founder for any business is make sure that your contracts are actually vetted. You work with an attorney to make sure every contract is actually for your benefit, and then work with companies. So that's something that we learned down the road, where in the beginning you give away a lot of stuff, and people expect that to be the same after 10 years, but then you need to be controlling what goes out, what comes in.
That's some great advice. I heard very early on in my career, I would rather disappoint you up front by telling you I can't move forward with the project as disappoint you later whenever the project goes south. And now we have hurt feelings along with a project that's not where either of us want it to be. I think it's
True.
definitely a two-way street there, and
Yeah.
mutual benefit is what we're all looking for.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a great conversation. One last question that I have for you before we wrap up. I'd love to know, what's one secret that you wish you would have known starting out as an entrepreneur?
I definitely, when we initially started the company, we started as a service industry. We, I wish we knew early on that you have to have products and services together. Product makes more sense than services. That's something, if I would have known before, it would have helped me a lot. It took us 10 years before we understood, okay, we need to develop products of our own instead of just relying on services.
That's some great advice. Thank you so much again for being here. Before we wrap up, if our listeners want to know how to connect with you or where to learn more about what you're working on, what's the best way for them to reach out?
They can go to our website, hexagonitsolutions.com, or they can email me at daks@hexagonitsolutions.com. Our contact page is there. They can fill out the form, and someone from our office would reach out. And if they want to talk to me, the guys will let me know that's the case. So
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And thank you so much to everybody for listening to C-Suite Secrets. If you have found today's episode as valuable as I have, be sure to hit that like and follow button and share with somebody else who is building a business. If you want more tips on how to grow your business between episodes, you can find me on Facebook at C-Suite Insiders or on Instagram at Heather Parsons Official. Until next time, keep growing, and remember, you don't have to do this alone.